the pipeline. They just need to sell more effectively.
I have to agree 100%, John. All right, so let's move on to our final talking point. We're going to start another poll as well. Okay, so we'll just end the second poll now and start the third poll. So bear with us.
You love your polls, Matt.
I do, yes. I may reevaluate how many polls I run in my next session. But anyway, we'll get that launched. I'll come back to it in a second. So now I want to explore a crucial component, and maybe the most important part of this whole session is how can we get sales leaders, business owners as well, to better prepare their sales teams to conduct more effective discovery. John, you've touched on a few. We both touched on a few of these points. You specifically on what sales leaders need to do. So moving forward to our poll, this is kind of a separate poll to maybe the point that we're covering. But what I want to understand from the audience again, I want to understand how long it takes you to drive a sale from cradle to grave. Now, it's going to vary depending. I know it's a very vague question. There is some madness there, John, I promise. You could be selling an ERP tool that takes 1.5 years to close, or you could be selling a $20 subscription, right? I get it, right?
I'm laughing at the word grave. I think there might be a mindset issue when we use the word grave.
Depending on what grave we're talking about. Very good. Anyway, yeah, so from the start of qualifying that lead to the grave, to the graveyard, how long that takes.
To positive implementation, right?
Positive implementation. There we go. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, sales leaders need to create and activate effective sales strategies. We've covered that already. This is very important. Sales leaders need to provide adequate training and adequate discovery and methodologies, asking the right discovery questions, all that sort of stuff. It's really, really important. It's super critical that we help our customers achieve an outcome, right? And sales professional leaders need to somehow find a way of articulating this and training their teams on outcomes, not product or solution selling. Now you've covered a couple of these, John, and I know you've mentioned the outcome in terms of we need sales leaders that train the right way, their sales team. But what strategies can you suggest? What can sales leaders start doing themselves to implement a better training program? Like, do they need to be catching up with their team, or one-on-ones better? Should they be talking less about soft KPIs? What do you suggest?
Well, the very first thing you've got to get in place is the right sort of cadence, the right sort of, whether you call it culture, cadence, framework, all of the above. Too often I get called in an organization, we've got lots of problems in our pipeline, we're not closing, we've got to learn how to close better and all that sort of stuff. I go in there, it's got nothing to do with that. It's right back and to do with the sales process, how it's aligning with the buying journey, getting in early enough in all the buying opportunities, and having the right sort of approach to the way we sell. And that solves then all the pipeline issues. It solves a whole host of issues. So we'll get to the behavior of the sales manager or sales leaders in the business in a second. But the first thing we get right is, what culture do we want to have? What does that mean? What sort of cadence, what sort of framework in the way we sell? Is our process right? Because more often not, the process is all designed on getting to the close rather than helping the customer. And so we need to really think about that. Then what mindset do we need in the organization that we need to project into our salespeople? And that's all around a customer-centric mindset. And what does that mean? So getting all that right first. Once you've got that right, we've got to get the sales management and other leaders in the organization to walk the talk. And that's really challenging. And if they're very used to getting out the whip and looking at the pipeline and saying, hey, what's happening on this deal, and when's it going to close, and what are you doing to close it, and all that sort of thing, rather than conversation about what's the customer trying to achieve here, what critical timeframes the customer got and why. All those sorts of questions that are customer oriented, they're the questions the sales leader needs to be asking of the salesperson, and get the salesperson back into the customer frame of mind, being customer centric. And then the salesperson will be behaving more correctly. The mindset's right, back on the customer. And if I leave one message at all for sales leadership, it is that it's a mindset of being customer centric in everything we do, And that means then we're going to have the domain knowledge that we talked about, because how can we have customer centricity if we aren't able to have the right conversation in the customer's domain and be an expert in that domain? That's just one of the outcomes of that. So it's all of those things through that chain.
That's interesting, John. So if we've got the right approach and the organization has the culture defined, they've got processes in place, then really the only missing link would be they need to hire the right salesperson, right? Or promote, right?
Change or develop the existing people. I mean, sometimes we throw people out. We're too quick to throw people out. People can change. So it's. But yes, you're right. You need the right team in place.
Yeah.
And you need that team operating in the right cultural way.
Right.
That's going to drive value for the customer. And I'm I really don't want to come back from saying we need to have, and the Americans talk about, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Hustling.
Yes.
And our connotation of hustling is manipulative sales, right? But I had a long conversation with Anthony Narina on the word hustle because I hated it. And Anthony was, surprised. And his whole view around hustle means active, following your processes, working, doing not so much doing the numbers, but doing what you need to be effective in driving value for your customer, and doing that consistently and well. So we need to be very active. We need to make sure every day we're planning our day and our time management spot on. We're doing all that with the right culture, the right cadence, all about the customer centricity.
And I guess there's too many organizations that, and back to the point of hiring the right person, I think this is really important. There seems to be that the best salesperson who's reaching the highest number of sales is hired as a sales leader, right? I mean, in my opinion, I think that's incorrect. Then you end up with someone that with a lack of management experience. Like, would you agree? Like, I mean, that's my view on it. That seems to happen a lot. It's happened. I mean, I was promoted to a manager and I didn't have a clue what I was doing back in a tech company I used to work for. I had to learn. Yeah.
Well, two things. One is too often we hire people that don't have the right aptitude to be a sales manager.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that a lot of top salespeople really don't have the right, personality or inner being that makes them a good sales manager. They want to take over or whatever the case is. So yes, you've got to choose the right people to be a sales manager, and then you need to help them learn how to be a good manager. And so, training's one, coaching's another. I'm a great believer in mentoring, and coaching drives a lot more value than a training course. A training course, we unless it's part of an overall change program, all it does is you learn a few things, you forget most of it within 30 days, and you go back to your old way of doing things. Training is important, but it's got to be part of it. How are we going as an organization? How are we changing? Where are we driving to? What sort of culture are we driving to? And then have coaching and mentoring programs as well as training that drives that sort of change in behavior. So to answer your question, the sales leaders need to be all the time focused on getting the right people in and helping them develop, and they need to have the skills to do that. And more often than not, don't hire the best salesperson as a sales manager. Hey, for all those people out there, you got to think about your career paths in your organization. The top salespeople are probably paid better than the sales leader, the director of sales in the organization, if you've got the correct career model, and they're recognized at the same sort of lead, even though they might be reporting up to the sales leader, they're actually peer level. They just happen to have this career that goes into sales versus a career that goes into sales management, but they're both at the same level. Whereas we tend to have a management model that's hierarchical, and therefore the most senior person in that levels of the hierarchy are the ones that are the gods. And so we encourage salespeople that are not going to be a good manager to think that they've got to move up into the management structure. It's just crazy thinking.
So, John, now a question I've been wanting to ask you for a while, and maybe the rest of the audience has been pondering on it. So let's just say, great, we've built going back to the Wentworth Prospect, as you articulated. You've built the right domain. You understand the product. You've had multiple discoveries. You've disrupted the customer's thinking. They keep asking for price, but you keep saying no. Before we do that, let's deep dive into this, and then they're really excited. And there's multiple parties to the table. You feel like you've got it. Got the situation under control, right? You feel like you've got it. It's a done deal. I don't like that word, like hustling, all that sort of stuff. So, can we mention product? I mean, when is the right time to mention product?
When discovery and disruptive thinking is finished.
Cool.
How do you measure that? Well, that's when the customer says, aha, so
right.
If I ran my business this way, I would drive this level of value, additional value in the business. I get that. It all makes sense. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, let me just talk about how you might implement it. And part of that implementation will be some software or whatever it is you're selling that's going to help you achieve that. And so let me put a proposal on the table. You already know what it is, right? You don't know our product. We haven't discussed our product, but you already know that the outcome of the process you're going to go through and the change in the way you're doing things are going to drive this outcome, which will drive that value. That's all very clear. Now we'll put the proposal on the table on how we can help them achieve that. And that's our product proposal.
Great stuff. I want to go back to my poll, John, really quickly, because you know how much I love my polls. The reason I was asking the question, I want to point this to the audience. Now, again, I agree. This varies depending on what you're selling in a sales cycle. But can I invite anyone to jump in and jump on the chat and let us know if you, in the last couple of years, have you seen sales cycles like dramatically increase in what you're selling? You don't have to tell us what you're selling. I'm just curious to see. I mean, it looks like most of the audience are 4 to 6 months as the average sales cycle, which is massive. But it depends what you're selling, right? Maybe the majority of people on the call are not. No, they're selling stuff that takes longer to sell. But if I could invite,
can I rephrase that? It depends on how
you
on how you're helping a customer achieve an outcome, not what you're selling, right? And that will be, if it's a more complex solution or a process that you're going through for the customer, that will extend that time. How do we shorten that? Well, you've got to learn how to get that customer through that thinking journey more quickly. And of course, you've got a whole host of other issues today. Decision making in organizations is much more complex. There's more people involved in the decision. Therefore, we cover this in the Wentworth Prospect in the book, where the heroine really gets to understand all the individuals in the decision making unit and works out how they can accelerate a decision, helping the champion. So you've got to identify the champion and all that sort of stuff. Really important stuff. So where was I going there? I think I was trying to answer the question, but you can reduce the lead time, but the focus is on helping the customer get through the process more quickly, not on how you can close more effectively.
No, I agree, John. So absolutely. So I think also my point was more in relation to, I guess, sales cycles have increased as a general rule, and to the point that you've mentioned, I agree with that. But I also believe that for whatever reason, and also what you've mentioned, COVID and a whole bunch of other things, that has played an impact on sales cycles over the years, especially over the last 2 years. But we've got a couple of questions coming in, one from Sam. So sometimes the customer is on the wrong path with price and numbers driven by their senior management board. How do we change the board's thinking? So I mean, just my point, John, quickly on that is, the person that you're talking to may not be the right decision maker, right? And you haven't spoken to enough people to create enough value. That's my view on it. What's your take, I guess, on different price expectations? I mean, the CFO is going to go, well, no, that's too expensive. Sorry. The sales director is going to go, well, I really need it. Like, we see massive value in this, or country manager, or whoever you may be, right?
This will sound trite, but when conversation comes down to price and debate about price, and they're not accepting the price, it's because they haven't got their mind around the value. and the change that that's going to drive the outcome they're looking for and the value for the organization. Once they understand that value and the importance of the change, price starts to become fairly immaterial. Now, everybody's going to jump up and down and so on, but I've got a client. It's really interesting. I've got a client that has just merged with another company, and they sell capital equipment, earth moving equipment, and all that sort of stuff. Now, a typical sale might be between $200,000 and $2 million for a big bit of gear. They merged with this other company. My customer had a 40% gross margin. The other one's come in with a 15% gross margin. So we've looked at the two different product ranges and said, well, what's the difference? The difference was purely how the two organizations sell. And one's selling around price and all their competitors, this is what we're priced at, and therefore we can't get an extra 2%. And all. The other one was saying, forget the competitors, let's go in and work with our clients and help them be champions, help them achieve the outcomes they're looking for. Again, it was in the construction industry. And the outcome was the customers love them. The customers see them as partners and helping them achieve an outcome. And the whole process of the sales process takes them through to really clarity around the value, and then they look at the price and it's only 1/10 of the value they're going to get out of it. It's a no-brainer. And some little jerk down in the organization said, but I've done some research, this other competitor out here can provide a product at 30% or 40% below that price. There's no, that might put a little bit of pressure on, should we have a discussion about price? But the reality is, sorry, that's our price. Here's the value you're going to get, right? Why are we having this conversation?
Agreed. And
it was just so stark. These two organizations selling similar gear, one at 15% gross margin and one at 40%. And that was the only difference, the way they sold and the way they engaged with their client.
We've got a couple of other points in, John, from there's a bit of a debate going on our chat group. So there's